In Judaism, there is something very definitive that makes something a holiday. How do we know what things in our collective history are meant to be celebrated as a holiday and those things that are not? Meaning we've had a lot of miracles happen to us as a people. What makes those things, certain miracles, holiday worthy that we celebrate every year, and other things, one-time events, things that we don't commemorate every year? And so on the Jewish calendar, when God designates a holiday, or sometime when the rabbis, the sages, institute a holiday to be made every single year, it's because the energy that was present on that first year, that first time, that same energy is present every single year when the months turn, when we reach that point in time again. Time in Judaism is not linear. We're not celebrating an event that happens 3,000 years ago. Instead, we're celebrating circular time, meaning that when we reach a holiday, a Pesach, a Shavuos, a Sukkot, a Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, a Pesach, we are re-experiencing the energy that took place that very first time. We have a mitzvah on Pesach, and truly we have a glimmer of that every day, but really the biggest time that it shines is on Pesach. The mitzvah is to see yourself, each one has to see themselves as if they personally are coming out of Egypt. See yourself as if you're actually coming out of Egypt. Okay? The Haggadah tells us very clearly that that's supposed to be our goal as well. It says even if we were all wise, people of wisdom, scholars, we would still have the obligation Passover night to discuss the Exodus. And the question is, why is that? If we know the story, we heard it last year, we saw the video, we read the book, whatever it is, we know what happened, why is it that we have to every single year on Passover tell this story again? And the reason is because we're not only telling the story, we're not recounting an event that happened 3,000 years ago. We're reliving an event. The leaving of Egypt, the exodus, the personal exodus, is happening to each and every one of us come Pesach. Come that night, we are going out of Egypt. Now what does it mean to go out of Egypt? We're supposed to envision ourselves as if this Passover, I'm going out of Egypt. What does that mean? Has anyone ever been to Egypt? Yeah. Okay, we have one. We've seen pictures. Maybe most of us, whatever we saw on our trip there, we saw a limited area of Egypt. How are we supposed to envision ourselves? What does it mean to envision yourself as if you're going out? How do you do this mitzvah? So Egypt is not only a geographical location on the map. It's not just a place in East Africa that the Jews left 3,000 years ago. Egypt is also a state of mind. In fact, in Hebrew, the way that you say Egypt is Mitzrayim, which is related, and many of who are in this class have heard the word before. It's related to the word Meitzarim, which means a limitation. Those things that confine us. It's what I like to call the inner Egypt. The Egypt within. So it's a state of mind. It's a state of being. Egypt, the inner Egypt, are those things that enslave us. Those things that keep us confined. Those things that keep us from expressing and being and living who we really are, fulfilling our purpose, being all that we can be, showing our true self, showing our uniqueness. We're enslaved, though. We sometimes are not in control of our own self. Many of us realize that we're physically enslaved. Maybe we don't have taskmasters over us, but how many times does a person eat a full meal, And they're so full, they, unnotch their belt, they're like that full. And all of a sudden, out comes the cake, right? Out comes the chocolate cake, put it out, and you can't help but taking a bite, 2 bites maybe the whole thing. So we see that who's in control over there? Is it us or is it the cake? So we have times in our life where we're physically enslaved. And that extends to not just food, that extends to many areas in our life. Money sometimes can lead us in the wrong direction. How many times is a person watching television or watching a movie? Not that I recommend either one of those, but how many times is a person doing that and something more important comes up? The kids want to play, kids want to talk, someone comes to the door, there's an important phone call, but you can't take it, you can't pull yourself away because, my show is on. Oh, the movie's on, it's getting so good. And we can't pull ourselves away. So who's in control over there? The movie, the television, the internet, or you? Don't have to answer. So we have physical enslavements in our life. We're also psychologically enslaved. I love a quote from Carl Jung in his book, The Undiscovered Self. He says, where the many are, there is security. What the many believe must of course be true. And what the many want must be worth striving for and necessary and therefore good. The biggest form of slavery today is conformity to Western society. We feel that we have to fit in and do what everybody else is doing and think what everybody else is thinking. Be a part. You don't want to be the person who thinks differently than everybody else. We have groupthink mentality. Everybody believes one way. Everybody looks at things one way. Everybody approaches life and has the same American Western goal. The purpose of life is to have a 2-car garage, 2.5 kids and a dog, and you have a happy life. That's what's perfection. One of the reasons that 70% of our population is on some sort of upper or downer is because we recognize deep down that our life, our inner self, doesn't jive with society. It's not what we really want, but it's what everybody else does, and that's what's been told to me that's successful, and that's what's been told to me what my purpose is, and that's been told to me what's good and what's right and what's proper. But it doesn't jive with me. And so we get depressed. We need to take an upper. Something to make us feel not depressed. That I haven't achieved this status or whatever in society. Or that I look at things differently. Or that I like to associate with a different type of people. Or I like to dress a certain way. Nope, you better get your hair cut a certain way. Because that's the style. You better wear these kind of clothes. Because that's the style. So everything, physically, psychologically, emotionally, we are enslaved constantly. We don't even realize it. When choosing Torah, when a person does the right thing based on the Torah's perspective, we look at the world through the Torah lens, that's a way that a person can really exercise free choice, to get in touch with their deep down self. Otherwise, we're enslaved to the world. It's either the world vision of how to live or the godly vision of how to live. Freedom also doesn't necessarily mean comfortable. There's a lot of people who are complacent in their slavery. In fact, the Jewish people in the original Exodus were very complacent. They weren't necessarily in a rush to leave. In fact, the only reason that they left in such a haste, that they didn't have enough time to bake the matzahs, was because they were running from themselves. If they would have stayed in Egypt any longer, they would have been completely complacent in their slave life. Many people stay in abusive relationships because they're comfortable there. They're used to it already. So freedom is not necessarily synonymous with comfort, with what makes you feel comfortable. Sometimes when we're in a state of exile, when we're in a state of slavery, We look at freedom as slavery, and we see our slavery as freedom. Just like in this world of falsehood, many people look at truth as false, as bad and false, and they look at falsehood as true and worth living towards and worth aspiring to. What freedom really means, it's understanding that I don't have to let my emotions rule over me. I don't have to let society dictate over me. I can be my own person. I can be the real me. And I can shine the way that I'm meant to.
Click subscribe to see more exclusive content for the most sought-after Jewish speakers, teachers, and thinkers.